You guys have now 2 channels. Second half of anatomy and nutrition. All right, so just like our sugars had simple sugars becoming more and more complex, we have the same idea here with fats and fatty acids. But instead of adding more and more molecules, because remember we had monosaccharide, combined, now we have a disaccharide, combine more than 2, we have a polysaccharide. In this case, what we are primarily referring to is the number of double bonds. Fats are what we call a hydrocarbon organic structure. When we are looking at the bonds that hold the carbons together, that's what tells us how complex is this molecule. Because the more double bonds I have, the more difficult it is to break them apart. Saturated fatty acids have nothing but single bonds. Saturated, single bonds. It doesn't take a whole lot of energy to break a single bond. Mono unsaturated, sometimes we just say unsaturated, would have one double bond somewhere in the chain. Poly unsaturated has more than one, could be 2, could be 12. The more double bonds I have, the more energy I have to use to break them apart. So looking at these 3, saturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, which one do you think is going to have my body use the highest amount of energy to break apart and use? Yeah, the poly. So knowing that, which of these structures would be good for the diet of a overweight animal? Yeah, we're going to want to add our polyunsaturated. Saturated or monounsaturated, those are going to be the structures we would use primarily for animals with a digestive disorder. I don't want the small intestines to have to work super hard to get the energy needed. Or maybe puppies and kittens. Their GI tract is just learning what it needs to do. It's learning how to do its job. And so I'm going to make sure that the job it's doing is very easily performed. Now, depending on where that first double bond is, that determines what does your body do with that fat.
Instead of puppy or mild unsaturated or saturated.
Yeah, either one. We're not going to primarily give a nutrient that's very difficult for our body and uses a lot of energy, because puppies and kittens, their little intestines are like, I'm just learning this job. Don't give me something too hard to do. And so you're going to see in your growth diets more of the saturated, monounsaturated, because it's more of a training exercise if we think about it that way.
So it's not that either, like any of those 3 necessarily bad for them to break down. It's just which one is easier.
Absolutely, and I'm sure where this is coming from is you guys have probably heard something of a nasty rumor about one of these saturated fats. What was the nasty rumor that you've heard about them? They're bad for you.
They're just misunderstood.
They are misunderstood. Here's why they're misunderstood. Okay, all of you guys, your small intestines, remember small intestines are breaking it down, peak shape of their life. Your small intestines will never work as efficiently as they are working for you right now. So they're through a saturated fat like butter. Am I expending any energy at all to break down a saturated fat? No. So if I'm not using a whole lot of energy, but I am getting a butt ton load of energy, Where does all that extra go?
The rest of the life.
To your adipose tissue, which would be what type of fat is found in every yummy thing on the planet.
Saturated.
Saturated.
So that's like butter and all that stuff. That is all saturated.
It's all saturated. But I mean, if we delved deeper, which we're not going to, and you
Yeah.
start looking at your LDL, which is a type of cholesterol, saturated fat gives you a crap ton of energy without using a crap ton of energy. And so everything that's left over, and saturated fats are in a form that is super duper uber easy for your body to store. So like Krispy Kreme donuts are nothing but a deep fried bundle of saturated fats. And if you eat a Krispy Kreme donut every day, well, you can pick your episode on my 600-pound life. So saturated fats are fats. You need to have fats in your diet. It is the form of fat that determines how is it stored, how efficiently is it used, and how much energy does it take for you to break it apart. When we are looking at these organic molecules that do have one or more double bonds, what your body is really looking at is where is the first one. So when this fat comes down the sorting table and your small intestines are looking at it, they will identify the first double bond, and that will determine what do we do with it. What is this fat's function? Some fats are great for things like helping your blood vessels to constrict and dilate. Other fats are fabulous for your hair and coat and your claws. Some fats are a primary source of adipose tissue. Some fats help with immunity health. And it's all because of that first double bond that determines what do we do with it. And in fact, I'm willing to bet that you may have heard the term for the location of these first double bonds. Have you heard the term omega? What is it?
Omega-3 and omega-6.
Why do you think it's called an omega-3 fatty acid? Because the first double bond is between the third and the fourth carbon molecule. What do you think about this omega-6? It's between, right at the sixth carbon molecule is the first double bond. It doesn't mean that's the only double bond. It just means it's the first double bond. So that's what we're talking about. Your body uses omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids very, very differently.
Some of those words in the Purina little nutrition thing, the thing was like 17 letters long. My tongue did not want to say those words.
Right? Or are you getting into like the FOS,
Yeah,
the
like
fructooligosaccharides?
Yes, that was terrible. Like I like forced myself to learn how to say them, and at the end the word is out.
Yeah, that it's a type of carbohydrate found in the growth diets, the FOS, which is a very, very easily digestible. It's called the fructo. See, Sean, shut your face. Shut your holes. Fructooligosaccharides.
Sorry. Oh, they're terrible to say.
Here's just a little picture for you visual learners. Now, obviously, this is not what a fatty acid looks like, but this just goes to show saturated only has single bonds. Mono unsaturated, sometimes we can just say unsaturated, means the same thing, has one double bond. Polyunsaturated has more than one, could be 2, could be 12. But it's the location of the first bond that determines how does our body use this fatty acid initially. give you guys a minute. You're furiously writing. You guys still doing like microscope stuff in Lab Pro?
No, we don't-
Moved on to parasites.
Oh, you told me you were gonna tell me when you moved on to parasites.
We did
No, we
yesterday.
didn't do the microscope.
Well, we're just doing the review. We haven't really gotten into it yet.
Oh my God, tell me what you do. I love parasites. I love them. I will help you with the terminology because if you thought that fructooligosaccharides was a mouthful, wait until you get into things like Valus asteris, Insulostoma caninum, Trichuris vopis, Toxocara canis, Toxocara cacti, Toxocaris leonina, Lenzinaria
That
stenoscala,
sounds fun.
A whole different language.
Paradonamus calicati, Plinium caninum. Those are all names of parasites. No, they're all Latin names of parasites. I will help you. I will help you because I love parasites and I will help you. I love them. Your trematodes, nematodes, cestodes.
You're a doctor or a nurse, you know, spit some words out of people.
Yeah. My professor, so all of our tests when I was in college were fill in the blank.
Ooh.
Every test, there was no such thing as a Scantron. No such thing as a Scantron. Nope. And spelling counted with no mistakes. If you got, it was either right or it was wrong. There was no partial credit. And he loved to examine and test us over the Latin names of the parasites. But what was horrible and horrific is you guys get, Lab Pro does like canine feline parasites. And then you get your equine parasites, like your strongyloides, your flukes in equine. And then in food animal, you get your large food animal parasites. We had one class that was every single species, and he would jumble them up. So you would have your roundworm of dogs, which is different than so like you have your roundworm of dogs, which is Toxocara canis. But then you would have like a roundworm of cows, which is a form of tinea. And then you got 5 different types of tinea dentata, etc. And it was all jumbled up. And he would just show you a picture of an egg. And you had to identify it. And his favorite one to quiz us over was Macrocantharhynchus hirudinaceus. It's the thorny-headed worm of swine. Macrocantharhynchus hirudinaceus.
Say that 5 times.
But remember, spelling counted. Needless to say, I did not do very well in that class the first time.
What was your strategy?
What was my what?
Your strategy? People should write them down a lot of times.
Just muscle memory.
It helps to spell things backwards. So like when I used to do like competitive spelling bees when I was younger, and then I would learn big words like that. I would spell them backwards.
There was a spelling bee by accident. My mom was she was like, I don't know.
All right, so here we have 2 fats. So this is what I'm talking about. Now I know here we have a saturated. And I know that someone's like, but Miss Huff, how is that saturated? There's a double bond right there. Sometimes that's what you sound like in my head. Is this double bond in the hydrocarbon backbone?
No.
It is not, so it does not count. I am looking at double bonds here in the hydrocarbon backbone. Here we have a single double bond. And that would be unsaturated or monounsaturated. And then, of course, if I had more than one, polyunsaturated.
Is that omega-6 on the bottom?
Is a what?
Is that omega-6?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is not.
So
Omega-6 would be in between the 6th and the 7th.
Do we count the first carbon?
Oh, wait a minute. Hydrocarbon. So I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it is an omega-6. Yeah, you start at the hydrocarbon. I was starting at the oxygen carbon. Start at the hydrocarbon. So that would be an omega-6. His fancy name is linoleic acid, but we'll get there in a minute. So just so you've heard the word before. Saturated or fats that have all single bonds are far more common in animal products, less common in vegetable. Now, I'm going to say this sentence and then I'm going to explain this sentence. As the saturation increases, fats become less solid. So in this case, what I need you to do is think of saturation as single bonds. Single bonds are going to be much less rigid than a double bond, right? Think of cooked spaghetti versus raw spaghetti. Cooked spaghetti is all floppy. Raw spaghetti is rigid. The more double bonds I have, the more rigid the structure. Does that make sense to everybody? So when I start plucking out and breaking those double bonds, turning them into single bonds, do you see how the structure is now going to become less solid, more floppy? As I am increasing the number of single bonds, it is said that I am increasing the saturation. Saturation and single bonds in our mind, according to the fats, mean the same thing. So if I am increasing the saturation, I am increasing the single bonds, which means I am decreasing the double bonds, causing cooked spaghetti.
So I'm double bonded, right?
So yeah, I'm just using spaghetti because one is less rigid than the other.
Oh, yeah, no.
In this case, what we're really looking at is less solid, more liquid. Cooked spaghetti is not really a liquid.
Yeah.
But it gives you a mental image.
All I was asking is when you made the reference, and you said that uncooked spaghetti was more double bonded.
Yeah, more rigid.
Okay.
So as saturation increases, as the number of single bonds increase, my fat will be less solid. Floppy spaghetti, single bonds. Does that make sense to everybody? Did anybody fall off the bus with that? You're all on the bus, or are you pretending to be on the bus, so I'll stop talking about it. All right, I'll give you guys a minute. I'm watching the most fabulous show on Prime right now. I've binge watched the first 3 seasons in the last less than a week. It is a show entitled Animal Kingdom.
Good show.
It's fabulous. Oh my God, I can't even tell you. I can't even talk about it. Did anyone in here watch Sons of Anarchy? Oh, hell yeah. Okay, think Sons of Anarchy-esque, but with robbers and surfers.
It's called Animal Kingdom.
It's called Animal Kingdom. It's absolutely fabulous.
They have a character from Peaky Blinders in it.
And it's just amazing, and it's so good, and it's just this family of degenerate thieves, but the way they steal stuff is so creative.
I like the new king.
So I'm just, yeah, Josh.
Yeah.
So we're on now season 4. I started watching this last week. Needless to say, I failed my government test.
Oh, no.
I did.
Oh no.
Oh Lord, I studied so hard for that test, and there was nothing of what I studied. And then they do a remote proctor, and I've never used a remote proctor, so I didn't realize that they weren't actually watching me. All they were watching was that I didn't have any other browser tabs open, so I technically could have cheated and used my notes, but I didn't, and I failed it. I still got a B in the class, but dropped my GPA.
What did you do in equine?
yet. I submitted our final project on Sunday.
You guys finally decide what we're gonna do.
Oh, it was already set, that we had to do the feeding requirement worksheet for the 4 different breeds and life stages of horses. So mine was a big fat quarter horse gelding. So I don't know yet, but I will report. Although honestly, at this point, I'll take the B. I don't care. I'm just so grateful that that class is over. But yeah, only 2 Bs I have right now are both in general education classes. Grr. Mainly because I don't care about them. I really don't. I couldn't care less about Texas government. And now I got to take stupid federal government.
Oh my God.
Did you have to do those too for your bachelor's? Yeah, it's dreadful. All right, so how else do we classify fat? Fats have so many ways for us to classify them, it's ridiculous. So we've just talked about the first way, and that's to identify how many double bonds, where is the first one. That's all the words saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated mean. How many double bonds? The next way that we can identify and classify fatty acids is how many carbons do I have in the chain? How long is the molecule? Fatty acids fit together like a choo-choo train. We have short chain fatty acids, and these are mainly building blocks. These are the individual cars of the train. I can take these short chain fatty acids, hook them together into medium chains, and then I can either take those medium chains and continue to hook short chains to them, or hook a couple of medium chains together and make a long chain. In this scenario, very often Doug will change the word chain into train, because in my mind, that's exactly what's happening. Our short chain fatty acids, they are building blocks only. If you have a train car, one train car, is it doing any good whatsoever? No, it's standing there on the tracks. It's not mobile. It can't carry anything. But now when I start joining them together, now we got some power behind us. So these are simply how long is the chain. As I said, short chain fatty acids are building blocks only. You're never really going to see anything made of short chain fatty acids and only short chain fatty acids, because they're the building blocks for longer and longer fatty acids. Medium chains, because if you think about it, a medium chain does not have as many bonds. So it's going to be easier for your body to utilize and break down, which means that it's very good for things like baby's milk. We find it in mother's milk. And foods that are incredibly easy for you to break down, like cocoa nuts. Cocoa nuts are medium chain fatty acids, and it's so easily broken down in your body that it will even overwhelm your adipose tissue. And Carl is like, I can't keep up with this. And your body starts getting rid of them, which is why cocoa nuts, natural laxative. They make you have sweaty poops. That's a descriptive term, isn't it? Sweaty poops. Wow, that's gross, Doug. How did you just come up with that? Gross. Sweaty poops. Long chains are the ones most commonly found in all of the foods. The longer the chain, the more palatable the fat. These are far more palatable, and palatable simply means taste good. So these fatty acids taste yummy. So short chains are the building blocks, medium chains are easily broken down, found in things like mother's milk and cocoa nuts. Long chain are going to be the most commonly found and the most palatable of the three. Comments, questions, concerns so far? Everybody's okay? Fabulous. Give you guys a minute. Yeah, the crazy thing about parasites is the minute that you get happy and satisfied with the pronunciation of the name, they change the darn name. I'm very serious. Like, for example, there's one called the pseudoparasite or pseudo heartworm. Heartworms are Diplodium canine, not Diplodium, no, Direflaria immitis. There's one called the false heartworm, which looks like a heartworm, but it's not a heartworm. And when I was in college, it was Dipetalonema retundidum. And now they changed the stupid name. I don't even know what it is anymore. Same parasite. They just said, hey, let's mess up everyone that learned it as Dipetalonema. I know, right? Kookaroo. So 2 of the fatty acids, by no means all of the fatty acids, but these are the 2 that we probably are most familiar with, is our omega-3 and our omega-6 fatty acids. These are the ones where on the front of your pet food bag in great big letters, it says, we're doing you a favor. We have added omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Thank you, pet food company, except you don't have a choice and you have to add those. You're not doing me a favor, you're doing what is keeping you in compliance. So pet food labels and pet food packaging just makes me giggle. I just walk through Target and I just laugh. Where they're like, okay, you have to add omega-3 and omega-6 in order to call it a pet food and sell it as pet food. It is part of the complete and balanced diet. But you're acting like you're doing this humongous favor by adding it, and you've done something special to your pet food that nobody else has ever thought of before. You have to. This is a non-negotiable. These omega-3 and omega-6, as I said, are named because of where the location of the first double bond is. And that determines what your body does with it. Now, being that these fatty acids have to be in the diet, dogs and cats have to have them. They are referred to as essential fatty acids. Whenever we use the word essential for a nutrient, what that means is you have to take it from an outside source. If I have a nutrient that is considered non-essential, doesn't mean that you don't need it. It just means that you don't need to take it in your diet because your body is going to bippity boppity boo those Legos and create it for itself. A nice example are dogs. Essential fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6. But dogs can take the Legos from omega-6 and bippity boppity boo them into a third type of fatty acid called arachidonic. So if dogs are able to make arachidonic for themselves, would that be considered essential or non-essential? Is non-essential. Essential, non-essential means, do I have to take it in my diet? If I don't, it's not essential. It doesn't mean I don't need it. Doesn't mean I can't use it. Just means it's not essential to get it in my diet. Cats also need arachidonic acid, but they don't have the ability to make it for themselves. They are unable to convert the omega-6. So would arachidonic acid be considered essential or non-essential in the feline diet? Essential. Which is yet one more reason why you cannot feed cats like they are little dogs. Because if arachidonic is not essential in dog food, am I, as the owner of Huff and Puff Awesome Dog Food Corporation, going to put it in the dog food?
No.
No, if I don't have to, I'm not going to. Well, because bing, bing, ching, ching, that's what it's all about. Pet food companies is making money. I'm not putting arachidonic acid in canine food if I don't have to. But if I'm feeding my cat dog food, what's it not getting? It's not getting arachidonic acid, and it can't convert the omega-6. Cats are aliens, man. They just have different nutritional needs than any other animal on the entire planet. We have some fancy names that I'm sad to say you do need to know. Omega-3, we're going to break this down so we learn it together. Obviously, alpha. Linolenic acid. This one's fun to say. In fact, omega-3, if you're doing the fancy name, just keep touching your tongue to the top of your mouth. Alpha-linolenic acid. Omega-6, linolenic.
Miss Huff, you said to touch the roof of your mouth with your tongue, and you actually do it 3 times like omega-3. So,
Alpha-linolenic. Oh, I actually do it 5 because you're touching your tongue on the ends as well. But if that works for you, that's a great way to remember. 3 L's in alpha-linolenic omega-3. So this is just a picture. This is just a picture.
So if this picture is depicting more than one omega-3 in one bond, is that normal?
So remember, omega-3 is not saying how many double bonds.
Okay,
It's only describing where is the first one.
okay.
This first one, so when this molecule comes into my body, the first thing my body person is going to do is go, okay,
I know what you
bam. Then it's going to start assessing how many other double bonds, how long is the chain, all of that other stuff. This, however, if you think of like a sorting, I don't know if you've ever seen like on Reddit, they have this fabulous Reddit site that I desperately love called Oddly Satisfying. And they have like an apple sorter where they dump the apples in and some of them go in this direction, some of them go in this direction, and it's based on like their size. That's kind of like what is happening here. You get all the fatty acids dumped and they're sorting them out based first and only on where's the first double bond. Then there's a whole other crew that goes through and says how many double bonds, what kind of triglycerides are we looking at, how easy is it for us to break apart these double bonds. The first double bond is just determining where and what is my body primarily going to pinpoint this for. So here in our linoleic, there's the first double bond. I'm not even looking at anything past that. That's what I'm looking at right now.
So there's a bit smarter name for omega-3.
Yep. Omega-3 is alpha-linolenic, and oftentimes pet food companies will put on the front of the package alpha-linolenic and linoleic acid added because it sounds so fancy and scientific. Holy smokes, you guys. This food, I understand it costs $15 more a bag, But look at the super fancy words that are on the front of the package. Okay, but now you guys know that's a total bull. Oh, I almost said a naughty word. A bull, you know what? They have to add omega-3 and omega-6. That's non-negotiable. If you have a species that has an essential nutrient, you can't sell a complete and balanced diet without it. But it looks fancy and scientifical, and I'm too ashamed to admit that I don't know what it means.
I've seen bags with both on them. So it'll say omega-3 and then it'll say alpha-linolenic acid on it as well.
It won't usually do both. They can. Yeah.
And animals cannot make essential fatty acids or essential ingredients on their in their
Right.
body. Okay.
Yeah, like when we get into proteins, we have specific essential amino acids, and then we have non-essential amino acids where we can take the amino acids and bippity boppity boo them into a different structure and create for ourselves. Anything we cannot make for ourselves is essential that we take it in the diet.
Thank you.
So our omega-3 alpha-linolenic, what does it do? Well, omega-3 is great for inflammation. So when would we probably see higher amounts of omega-3 added to a food? I don't know if I heard it. Yeah, senior foods. All arthritis is inflammation. If I have an animal who is a senior who might be prone to inflammation and arthritis, I might see greater amounts of omega-3 in a senior diet. Also because of the cognitive function, using your noodle. Visual acuity. Now, it's not going to prevent glaucoma or cataracts, but it can help to stem off some of the age-related degenerative eye issues. And finally, congestive heart failure and cancers. Now, am I saying that if you take omega-3, you'll be cancer-free? No, of course not. But it can, and there have been studies done that see that it does reduce the potential for certain types of cancer. What happens if we don't have it? If we are deficient in this fatty acid? Well, somebody tell me why fatigue is the first one. Okay, let's think this through. Let's do a critical thinking train.
Lack of energy.
Yeah, because isn't fat's primary job to give you energy? And if you don't have the fat, what do you also not have?
Energy.
The energy. Is that not the definition of fatigue? Yes, it is. Poor brain function, well, that goes right into the cognitive function. The great thing about these nutrients, if you can learn what they do, it's really pretty self-explanatory to figure out what happens if you don't have it. If omega-3 provides me energy and I don't have omega-3, I don't have energy. If omega-3 helps with my cognitive function and I don't have it, I no longer have good brain function. If omega-3 helps to stem off congestive heart failure and I don't have it, I'm going to have heart problems. If I suddenly have fatigue, poor brain function, dry skin, and heart problems, you think that's going to affect other hormonal balances within my body that controls my mood? Absolutely. And finally, if my heart is not functioning properly, how's my circulation? Bad.
I think it's systemic failure.
It really is. And that's why you cannot take fats and fatty acids out of the diet. Some of these fad diets that people go on where you're not allowed to eat any fats or you're not allowed to eat any carbohydrates are so dangerous. So dangerous. So as we go through the rest of these nutrients, the proteins, amino acids, the vitamins, the minerals, one of the things I recommend is concentrate learning what it does, because then it's pretty self-explanatory to figure out by reason of elimination what happens if I don't have it. If this nutrient does a job, I don't have the nutrient, can't do the job. It's not rocket science. If I'm a nutrient and my job is to teach this class and I am not here, nobody's teaching the class. So that's our omega-3, alpha-linolenic. Where can we get it from? Well, you can get omega-3. One of the more common places in our pet foods is from fatty fish. Fatty fish like salmon. That's why a lot of cat foods have salmon. Pilchards, sardines, herring, trout, tuna. Ugh, none of it. Gross. I don't eat any seafood. It's disgusting.
I see it.
Now, I'm okay with most other things. I'm a very, very picky eater. I don't eat any of the seafoods.
I don't know what flaxseed is.
So what a flaxseed is, it's just a type of grain that we derive the oil from. Hemp. Two of the more common ones that we use in pet food is going to be the canola, soybean, or walnut. We can do different types of seeds, have very high amounts of omega-3. Soy and tofu, disgusting, but very high quantities of omega-3. Green leafy vegetables. Now this is dark green leafy vegetables. This is not your iceberg lettuce. This is going to be your spinach, your kale. Omega-3, venison and buffalo are very, very high in alpha-linolenic. And in fact, we have a wonderful business just around the corner for you to get your omega-3 fatty acid fix. You guys haven't been there yet, Bubba's? Not yet. Bubba's is around the corner. It looks like a shack that's about to fall down. They have the best buffalo burgers in the city. Hands down. Buffalo burgers, amazing. In fact, once you go buffalo burger, you're gonna have a hard time going back to regular ground beef hamburger.
There's this place I used to go to called like Florence Waldo, a grill. I think it was all the way out in the Heights. They had like venison, buffalo, and snake. It was good, but I think it closed down.
I have a question about the oil. So like, I learned that the only oils that are like non-inflammatory are coconut, avocado, and olive. So like, wouldn't it be counterintuitive if the fatty acid is like anti-inflammatory to then give like an oil that's supposedly inflammatory?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So like, you know, like there's certain foods that you eat and they can be inflammatory, like tomatoes and stuff, and they can like, you know, like bloating and like other health issues with like being
Sure,
inflammatory. So
because
like,
of the acidity.
yeah, so like I was told that the only oils that were not inflammatory were coconut, avocado, and olive. But then like for your fatty acids, you have canola, flaxseed, like all of those up there.
So these are all, so omega-3 fatty acid is one single component to a ingredient. So when you have a tomato, when you have any of that's an ingredient. The omega-3 is a tiny, tiny little bit of that. What this is going over are foods that are higher in the omega-3 that are very often used, although this is human, but these are very often used in pet foods to provide. I'm not saying that everything on this list is an anti-inflammatory. That would depend on how much fatty acid does the ingredient have. It is the omega-3 that has the anti-inflammatory properties. But let's take a tomato. Tomato is very, very acidic, right? It's almost a citrus. Well, if I have a very small amount, very tiny amount of omega-3 fatty acids, then of course it's not going to be enough to combat the acidity and not allow it to be an anti-inflammatory. Does that make sense? These foods are very high in omega-3 fatty acids. Am I saying that tofu, go ahead and eat it if you've got arthritis? Meh. What I'm saying is all of these foods have a higher volume of omega-3, and it is the omega-3 that acts as the anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 fatty acid, let me move this thing. Omega-6 fatty acid is linoleic. That's its fancy name. In dogs, the linoleic omega-6 fatty acid is converted into arachidonic. Cats, it cannot. Therefore, arachidonic is non-essential in the dog, but is essential in the cat. And we'll talk about what arachidonic does here in a second. What omega-6 does, other than convert into arachidonic, omega-6 is the one that you're taking for your skin. It's the one that is infused in your hair products. Helps to regulate your metabolism, which is how quickly or slowly does your body use nutrients. Helps to maintain your reproductive status. And we find high amounts in seeds, nuts and seeds. Arachidonic acid is only found in animal tissue, which is one of the main reasons why cats are obligate carnivores. Because even if you're feeding them, they cannot get arachidonic acid from plant material. They have to get it only from its animal source base.
So I put like omega-3 and omega-6 like in my cat's food. They have like a salmon oil supplement that I use. And I was just wondering, so since they can't convert the omega-6, do they still use it? Or like, is it just something kind of...
Yeah, they're using the omega-6 for all of these same things. It's just dogs have one additional use for the omega-6, and that's to convert it into arachidonic. AA is the abbreviation for arachidonic acid. So there's our essential in our cats, linoleic alpha
Miss
linolenic.
Huff, could you go back just a second, please?
Yes. Sure thing. Oops. Easier said than done.
You get it?
Is everybody okay so far? This stuff is really pretty elementary.
So is it omega-6 that is stimulating?
Thank you.
Or is it arachidonic acid that is doing, or is it just both?
So omega-6 is converting into arachidonic. We have not yet gone into what arachidonic does yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not yet done the functions of arachidonic. All we know is one of the functions of omega-6 is to make arachidonic in the dog.
Thank you.
So our cats, we have the linoleic, alpha-linolenic, and arachidonic as essential. I remember, so obviously linoleic and alpha-linolenic are for both. Arachidonic to me, you know, I am hugely, hugely visual. I think in pictures, like my entire brain is a motion picture. It is. It's sometimes a little scary up in here. But I see stuff, like when I'm accessing, I'm physically looking mentally at a PowerPoint. I'm physically reading off of the PowerPoint. It's just how my brain works. So the minute that I hear arachidonic, it sounds very similar to arachnid. arachnid. It's not the same thing, but it sounds like arachnid. Immediately my brain goes to this little kitten who's playing with a daddy long legs. Just nothing that's going to hurt him, nothing that is terrifying, just this little daddy long legs, or one of the teeny tiny little ones that are not scary at all, because otherwise my brain would be terrified. But he's just, can you all see the little kitten? Just beep, beep, kind of bapping him. That's how in my brain, when I hear arachidonic, I immediately think of the kitten playing with the spider. And it reminds me that arachidonic, arachnid, cat. Although my brain works differently than most people's. So, but if that works for you.
So these are the essentials, basically?
These are essential. I have to have all 3 of these in the diet of the cat. I have to have these 2 in the diet of the dog because my omega-6 converts into arachidonic.
It already has it.
So he makes it for himself. I don't need to put it in his food because he's making it for himself. Arachidonic acid is a part of a group of fatty acids that works like a hormone. We talked a little bit about hormones and how they have a systemic or full body reaction. And so this arachidonic functions very similar to some of these hormones. Some of the things that it does, blood vessel constriction and dilation. When your blood vessels are expanding and contracting, and it keeps them elastic. Muscle contraction, we just talked about that, didn't we? Blood pressure, regulation of your body temperature, helps you clot. One of the things that helps you clot, there's so many things that help you clot, and also helps to control inflammation. So these are the functions of arachidonic acid. Linoleic, it's one of its functions is to turn into this in the dog.
We just went over it today, but would this cause the cats to have the extremely red gums if they don't have this? Is it they're
Their hematocrit.
Yeah. That cause the cats to be hematocrit if they don't have this?
So your hematocrit, otherwise known as your packed cell volume, your PCV, is more percentage of red blood cells in comparison with the total volume of blood. What this will do is prolong your clotting time. Where you have an injury and you're going to have hemorrhage, or it's going to take you longer to clot.
Okay.
But yeah, your hematocrit is not necessarily having to do with this. It's more, how is your body reproducing red blood cells? Am I losing them faster than I can reproduce them? Or am I not reproducing them at all? And it would be a clinical sign of anemia. So all of these essential fatty acids, the 2 in the dog, the 3 in the cat, the one organ function that is super duper independent, or not independent, dependent on fatty acids are your kidneys. Does anybody know what your kidneys do? Well, first off, they filter stuff. They're the hoarder of the body. Only about 1% of what goes into your kidneys gets filtered out by your kidneys. 99% gets circulated back into your body. Now, this, Sean, is part of the whole blood formation thing. Fatty acids together in balance play a role in kidney health. Why does that have anything to do with your hematocrit, your packed cell volume, your red blood cells? Not necessarily. Your kidneys produce a hormone called erythropoietin. When your red blood cells decrease, Because they don't live forever, do they? Your red blood cells are not infinite. They get taken out of circulation, they get old. Your kidneys are what signal your body to start producing more to replace them. If I'm deficient here, we'll do our critical thinking train. I am deficient in fatty acids, and fatty acids are needed for kidney health. Healthy kidneys are needed to signal my body to produce more red blood cells. When my body takes red blood cells out of circulation because they are old, my kidneys are the thing that I need healthy to replace them. No fatty acids equals sad kidneys. Sad kidneys means no more red blood cells. Anemia. Did that make sense? Does everyone understand my concept of the critical thinking train? Did anybody just get lost with my whole thing of the critical thinking train? Critical thinking is where you can hinge one ideal to another and reach a logical conclusion. Signs of a fatty acid deficiency: anemia, because of its role in kidney health. But some of the other factors, remember, what I need to do is figure out, what does this nutrient do? What happens if I don't have it? We know everything there is to know about the function of all of the fatty acids. I'm talking about just in general, not one in particular. We know that they help with hair and skin coat. If I don't have them, what do I get? Hair and skin issues. What is alopecia? Hair loss. If I am deficient, let's critically think through the hepatic lipidosis for a minute. Critical thinking train, pulling up. I don't have any fatty acids. Does my body still need fatty acids?
Yes.
Yup. Where could I pull those fatty acids from? The storage unit. If I start pulling out large volumes of fatty acids, where do they go to be converted into energy? The liver. And if I'm pulling out far greater quantities, the liver can't keep up with the demand, and I end up with a fatty liver. Does that make sense? So when I start asking these open-ended critical thinking questions, don't let your Doug come to a screeching halt. Little baby chunks, ask yourself, what is the logical next step? That's how you are going to be successful and pass your VTNE, is with small critical thinking train baby steps to the most logical answer. Finally, just a review. There are the building
I've got a
blocks.
question.
Yes.
You were breaking up the last section, but
No, beep bop, beep beep boop. Do you need me to repeat the fatty acids and its role in the hepatic lipidosis? All right. While I'm waiting for Charles's question, we are going to pick it up here, and we've only got, I think, a couple of slides left. What day is today?